Half a day, and we're back with another episode of the One Micronesia Podcast. Now, this episode, I get to sit down with one of FSM's and Pohnpei's sons who is out in the States just doing amazing things. And when you talk about what we experienced in 2020, the hardships, this guy was at the forefront dealing with it and facing it head on. Ladies and gentlemen, I do have with me on the podcast today Dr. Joseph, who resides all the way out in Texas. Brother, thank you so much for reaching out and wanting to jump on the podcast. I know we got a whole lot to talk about, but I just want to say thank you so much for reaching out, man.
Yeah, thanks, Victorious, man. Thank you very much for having me on your podcast, man. I'm such a huge fan. I really appreciate the fact that you guys do a lot of advocacy for Micronesians on Guam and abroad. So it's a pleasure, man. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
Let's start from how it all started for you.
Yeah, thank you very much, man. So, like you were saying, my name is Jalkannen Joseph. I am an emergency medicine doctor here, currently practicing in San Antonio, Texas. But I am from Pohnpei. I was born and raised in Pohnpei. And then after I graduated from elementary school, which is eighth grade in Pohnpei, my parents actually sent me to Guam to attend high school, So I actually lived, my connection with Guam is I lived there for 4 years, 95 to 99. And I actually went to Simon Sanchez High School.
Go
Home of the
Sharks!
Sharks, yay! I hope that school is still open. Make a big difference in my life. But after high school, I don't have any plans to go to college. I couldn't afford to go to college. And I couldn't even get a job on Guam at that time. So I joined the United States Air Force as a medic. And I actually served in the Air Force for about 10 years. And during my time in the Air Force, I had a couple of deployments to Iraq, which really inspired me to pursue medicine. So after 10 years of in the military, I got out of the military. I went to college here at UTSA. And after that, I got accepted into a program called Imi Ahola at the University of Hawaii. It's a year-long program. And then after I completed that program, I was actually matriculated into the John A. Burns School of Medicine at the University of Hawaii. And since I wanted to be an emergency medicine doctor, I came out here in San Antonio, Texas, where I'm finishing up my 3-year residency in emergency medicine. And here I am today.
Wow. I mean, that's crazy. I got to ask this, man. And it's one of those random questions that I just throw in the interview. Like, was a doctor or being in the medical field, was that something that you wanted to get into when you grew up?
Yeah, man, that's a very good question, man. And to be honest with you, man, I would say no, because there's not a lot of good examples to emulate in Pohnpei where I grew up. We don't have a lot of doctors. So I don't really have a lot of exposure compared to my counterparts here in the States. But I did have a dream, and it's just a dream. And as a matter of fact, I didn't think that dream would have come true based on where I came from. But opportunities happen, man. I think one of the things that really motivated me is the fact that I was a nerd when I was growing up. I'm not embarrassed to say that, but I was a nerd. So as a result, I did very well in school. And my parents actually, they knew that I can do well. So they were able to send me to Guam I was 13 years old, man. They sent me to Guam to attend high school. And they wanted me to stay on Guam and finish up high school there because they know that there's a lot of opportunities there and they know that I can actually compete. So all of this, I guess I'm thankful for my parents for their tough love at that time. Yeah.
I love the story. Your background is just an amazing. Like I said, your resume is stacked, and you just mentioned a few of those things that were on your resume. So, guys, this guy is such an amazing a doctor who's out there doing his best to not only serve the FSM community but to serve the United States as a whole. So when we come back, we're gonna go into talk about something that's very crucial right now, especially here in the Micronesian region, in Palau, Guam, Marshall Islands, and especially the FSM. And we're going to talk about vaccination, and we're going to hear it from the man himself to tell us, a little information of what we should know and why we should take the vaccine. So when we come back, we get to hear from Dr. Joseph. We'll be right back, guys. Half a day, guys, and we're back. It's the One Micronesia Podcast. We're back with another amazing episode because I get to sit down with a son of Pohnpei, a son of Micronesia, who's doing amazing things and at the front line of everything that we've experienced in 2020 and into 2020 until today. He's out there doing his part. He is a medical doctor practicing medicine all the way out in Texas. I'm talking with the one and only Dr. Joseph from Pohnpei. Bro, we talked about your past and how it all started for you, your journey through the military and off to medical school and to where you're at right now. And, this is one of the perfect times to get you on because we're talking about something that you're experiencing. You've pretty much lived through and you've pretty much experienced firsthand. So let's talk about it. Before we get the vaccinations, let's talk about your experience during this whole COVID, the scariest moment in time.
Yeah, thanks very much, man. So I think it's appropriate to start by talking about my experience here in San Antonio. So as an emergency medicine in San Antonio, we had our fair share of COVID patients here within the past year or so. Just like any other major cities in the United States, we did have our surge. First one was back in June of last year, and second one is earlier this year, around January or so. And during that time, we were having our daily positive rates were exceeding 2,000 per day. At one point, we have like 1,500 patients in area hospitals, 400 some patients in the ICU, and of those patients in ICU, 200 some patients are intubated and treated by intensivists in the ICU. So I've seen COVID is a spectrum of disease. Sometimes patient can come in without any symptoms, asymptomatic. Sometimes they can have cough, but the severe one is the one that presented and in severe respiratory distress that required emergent intervention. And that is when I come in as an emergency medicine doctor to stabilize that patient. And if they need to be intubated those patients and actually send those patients up in the ICU where the intensivist will care for them. And in my experience, these are the most difficult and challenging patients to take care of because they're usually really, really sick. And I think it's really, really important to highlight that because there are simple measures that we can do now in order to prevent that from happening. So God forbid we were to have an outbreak in Micronesia. We don't have the resources that we have here to appropriately care for those patients. So the things that we're going to talk about, such as vaccination, social distancing, are very important right now. But unfortunately, our vaccination efforts in Micronesia are not up to par right now. I'm sad to say that. And as of March 22nd, I think I read a report by His Excellency President Panuelo. He was addressing the Congress, and as of March 22nd, he mentioned that the fully vaccinated rate in the Federated States of Micronesia is around 18%. And if you further break it down in Pohnpei, it's about 14%. And in your home state of VF, they're actually doing pretty good, man. I think they're up to like 50%. But in all, the overall rate is, like I said, is 18%. And he wanted to be at 70% in order for us to start the repatriation process. But so far, I think we've kind of hit a stalemate. And I'm trying to see if we can provide some information that will help out in that effort so that we can obtain that 70% herd immunity. And I think in order for us to really talk about vaccine hesitancy, we have to talk about the vaccine itself, right? So for the past 2 weeks or so, I've been doing my own non-scientific sampling of people all over the United States, including Guam, Marshall Island, Pohnpei. I was just talking to a lot of people and I was trying to find out like if they're gotten their vaccines or if they're planning on it. And I think there are a couple issues that I persistently encounter, and one of them is safety. And safety is kind of a twofold issue. First, they want to know if the vaccine is safe, it's not going to make them sick. And second, they were concerned that the vaccine will actually give them the COVID, in which I was relieved because I was able to provide some clarity on that aspect. So I'm happy because I've been told that, and after having these conversations with these people, they were actually willing to go and take the vaccine to make sure that they're protecting themselves and their loved ones as well.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. When COVID happened, I think one of the key things that the public needed was information, and that was kind of on the first couple of weeks of lockdown. People were going crazy because they didn't know what happened. And then we got information about COVID. How can we prevent ourselves from getting COVID? Well, you wear a mask, you social distance, you wash your hand as much as possible. Those were the main things that the government and or our public, our public sectors, public health sector told us to do. So everybody followed it. So during that time, when we first went into lockdown, people started to do those things. Wear a mask, of course, social distance, or stay away from people if you want, if you need to, if you have certain medical conditions that really would really affect you if you get COVID. So people learned these things as we grew through our COVID-19 quarantine or pretty much era of our life. But then now when the vaccine came, that was a whole other beast that we needed to tackle. Information was key now again, because, okay, what is this thing? Is it safe? So guys, we're going to take a break and we'll be back with more here on the podcast. Howdy, guys. It's the One Micronesia Podcast, and we are back. The floor is yours.
I'm going to talk about one vaccine in particular. It's the Moderna vaccine, and it's because it's the vaccine that the government of the FSM chose to use. So the Moderna vaccine is one of the newer types of vaccine. It's actually an mRNA vaccine. mRNA technology is not quite new. It's been around for about a decade or so, but the vaccine now, it's probably one of the first time that it had been used on this massive scale. But basically how it works, it uses like a set of instructions that will tell your cells to make certain proteins. Now, if we compare that to the traditional vaccines, they usually have some component of the virus. Obviously, they have to weaken the virus and then put it in the vaccine and then give you the injections and wait for your body to mount the immune response. But this time, the mRNA doesn't do that. It's basically injecting a set of messenger mRNA that will tell your cells, hey, let's make this protein so that the immune system can make the response. Now, the mRNA vaccine, just to clear some of the things up, it will not enter your nucleus and it will not be incorporated into your DNA. So it can make you sick. It can. There's no other possibility it can. Case in point is that right now in the FSM, there's about, I think, 25,000 vaccines that have already been given. They still don't have COVID because they can't get COVID from getting the vaccines. Now, it's obviously different in the mainland or in Hawaii or Guam because COVID is active. So if you get the vaccine if you're going to get the vaccine and you got exposed to COVID within a week or so, then there's a chance that you might get the COVID, but it's not from getting the vaccine. I just want to clear that up. It's basically you getting exposed after the vaccine, but around 2 weeks or so, even if you get exposed to COVID, the studies had shown that your immune system at that time is already ramping up. So it's safe to say that it's safe in that aspect. The other component that I want to talk about is just the safety and efficacy of the vaccine. So as we all know, when the FDA approved the vaccine, the process still takes place. They still follow the same process that they would follow with any other vaccine. Preclinical trials, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And in phase 3, they actually did an extensive testing. They immunized over 30,000 people. And of the 30,000 people, there's only like 196 that got the virus after they were exposed. And once they look at those numbers, those who didn't get the vaccine, there were 185 cases in that group, but those who received the vaccine, there were only 11 cases that was reported. So with that, they were able to say that it's 95% effective in mild or moderate. But the most important thing is the remaining 5%, even if they get the COVID, they didn't get the severe form. So in essence, you can say that this vaccine is actually 100% protective against the severe form of COVID, which is what I'm scared of, which is what it's important part of my job and is what I do here. Like compared to a mild or moderate, which sometimes we can send those patients home. But what I don't want people to get is the severe form. And I'm glad to say that the vaccine is actually protective against that severe form of COVID.
Wow. And one of the other questions that I know has been asked is, why should I take the second shot?
Yeah, so it's all based on the studies that they're doing. So it seems like after the first shot, they looked at the patients. They were able to study their profile, and they noted that the immune system is actually ramping up at that time. Now, after the second shot, they look at those patients again, and their response is a lot higher. That's why they're saying that for now, all the studies are based on the two different shots. And the second shot is kind of like a booster shot. If you were, you can say that it's a type of booster shot, but basically the study showed that it's the second shot that actually increases that amount of immune response, which is very, very important in this aspect.
We talked about the stats from the FSM and how critical it is to reach a certain. And I know each government has their own herd immunity rate. And I know we talked about the FSM being, was it at about 70%?
I think their goal is to hit 70%, and it's the idea of getting a herd immunity, which basically means to vaccinate as many people as you could, you know. So they're aiming for 70%. Now we're at 18%, so we're still far off. But I would say this: since the vaccine is there now and is available, it's important for all of us Micronesians. It doesn't matter if you're living in Pohnpei, Palau, or Yap, Goshai, or Chuk, and if you're saying to yourself, "Oh, I can't make a difference," that is absolutely not true, man. You can make a difference because the government actually accounted you into the eligible group, so they're actually waiting on you. So it's very important to always remember that and do your part and get the vaccine in as soon as you can, because the sooner we get the vaccine, the sooner we're gonna approach that 70%. And if it's up to me, I'll be a little bit higher, but 70% is what they wanted to do. And once we get to 70%, the government will be more comfortable in restarting the repatriation process, which is very critical. I mean, we have Micronesians who are stranded abroad on Guam, Hawaii, in the mainland, and they've been away from their family for over a year or so, man. And it's challenging, man. We need to come together, work together so that we can bring these people home safely and at the same time help eradicate this virus from this planet. So if we do our little part in agreeing to get the vaccine, I think will play a huge role during this pandemic. And I'm hoping and I am reassured that we can achieve that at rate within the next couple of months.
All right, thank you. I mean, Dr. Joseph, I mean, the amount of information you just poured out, onto the podcast here. I think with people watching, I think if I was watching and it did not even have the idea of going to get a vaccine, just hearing what you just said, honestly, hearing it from you, honestly, I'm assured that now I want to go get the vaccine. Why? Because I want to protect myself. I want to protect my family. I also want to protect everybody else. So I think, me hearing it, I'm reassured that I need to go get the vaccine. And hopefully people who are watching right now, to get that reassurance that, hey, the vaccine is here for a good reason and it's here to protect us in the long run. So guys, we're going to take a break and we'll be back with more here on the podcast. Howdy, guys. It's the One Micronesia Podcast, and we are back to close things out. Man, there's a lot of information in there. So if you missed out, make sure to go back and watch the full version on the YouTube or the Facebook Live. It's always going to be there. So just go back and watch the different information that Dr. Joseph shared with us to kind of reassure people of why you should take the vaccine. So, yes, we're back with Dr. Joseph right now. And all the things you said, your experience, I think you've at this point inspired many young Micronesians to look into the field that you took up. So let's get your take and what would you tell younger Micronesians right now watching the podcast and hearing your experience and what you've contributed to the fight against COVID-19?
Yeah, thanks, man. I think I would, if I were to be talking to the young Micronesians right now, I would say continue to dream big. That's the most important thing to do. And if you're, it's also, try your very best in school. One of the things that we are not really good at is actually having mentors or role models and in career fields that we want. Like, I know when I was growing up, there's not a lot of role models around. So I didn't have a lot of role models in Micronesia, but here in the States, I do have a lot. But I think one of the things that I can provide right now is being a role model to the young Micronesian and actually show them that there's actually a way to become a doctor or achieve their dream if that's their dream. As long as you continue to apply yourself to the fullest, work hard in school. To me, education is the greatest equalizing factor in our society. You can be the poorest guy, have the lowest social background, but if you're smart enough and work hard in school and educated, that can take you a long way. And I think that's probably the best message I can pass on to the young Micronesians right now.
We're about to wrap things up here. Any last things you want to add before we close out?
Yeah, man. So I just want to, as we close things out, I just want to go back and wrap things up here. So I just want to reiterate that, we are fortunate enough to be Micronesian at this time. One of the things that we're good at is actually coming together and working together. So in doing so, I think we can overcome this pandemic and help eradicate this virus off this planet if we do such simple things, continue to social distance, wear your mask, but most importantly, man, please go get your vaccine. I'm here to tell you that, with my experience, I think vaccine is the best way to overcome this virus. So please go get the vaccine because it is safe. It's not going to give you the coronavirus, and it's safe enough for you to take, and it won't cost any abnormalities at this point with all the information that we know. Now, there might be some side effect, but those are usually temporarily and usually goes away after a couple of days. But in the long run, this vaccine to me, is safe so far. And I have spent countless hours studying the vaccines, looking over everything else, and I wouldn't ask you guys to do this if I don't think it's safe enough. So I am putting my reputation on the line, and I'm asking everybody else, please do your part, and please go get your vaccines if you're in Pohnpei, Palau, Yap, Koshai, or anywhere in Micronesia and the Marshall Islands, or even on Guam or abroad. Please, let's come together, do our part, and get our vaccines.
All right. Well, there you go, guys. It's Dr. Joseph all the way out in Texas reminding us why we should take the vaccine and how it's going to help us in the long run. Doctor, brother, thank you so much for jumping on. I know with the time we have, we can spend, countless more hours just talking about this, but we kind of you squeezed it all into one simple message, and you pretty much said it all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. It's a pleasure to be on your show, and I am willing to come back for any other additional podcasts if you guys need me. Awesome, man. Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Victorious, man. I really appreciate it.
All right. Well, there you have it, guys. It's Dr. Joseph all the way out in Texas, a son of Micronesia, doing his part in the front lines fighting against COVID-19. That pretty much wraps up another episode of the One Micronesia Podcast. We will catch you guys at the next one. Peace.